The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with a cold silence. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in their shining seats, each one representing a world that had existed for thousands of years. Their eyes, glowing in different colors, turned toward the center of the hall where one human stood alone. His name was Ambassador Rhys Hale, the voice of Earth among the stars. His dark uniform looked simple compared to the golden robes and jeweled armor around him, yet his presence carried a strange weight. Rhys's voice was calm, but every word hit like a hammer. "We do not want war," he said slowly, looking around the chamber. "But if you push us, if you provoke us, if you try to take from us, you will regret it. Humanity will not kneel. Humanity will not break." A low murmur spread through the room. Some delegates chuckled. Others whispered to each other in their own languages, their voices dripping with mockery. A few leaned back in their seats, amused. The idea that humans, young, fragile, and new to galactic politics, could challenge the council was laughable to them. They had fought wars before humans even learned to build ships. What threat could Earth be? At the head of the hall, the council speaker, an ancient creature made of living stone, leaned forward. Its voice was deep, echoing through the chamber like thunder. "Human delegate," it said slowly, "are you threatening the galaxy?" Rhys did not blink. His expression stayed calm, his voice even. "No," he said. "We are warning you. Leave us in peace." The words hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Then came the laughter. Deep, mocking laughter that rolled through the chamber like a storm. The delegates of the great empires, those who ruled dozens of worlds, laughed without shame. They called humans dramatic, foolish, and naive. Some even joked that Earth should be grateful for being noticed at all. But not everyone laughed. In the corner of the chamber, a few silent figures watched the human carefully. They were from races who had fought humans before. Small border wars, forgotten by most, but they remembered how humans fought. They remembered the desperation, the fire in their eyes, the way they refused to die even when defeat seemed certain. They had seen the pattern. Humans endured. Humans adapted. And when they were pushed too far, humans struck back harder than anyone expected. Still, the council dismissed the warning. Reports from human colonies about alien raids were ignored. Complaints about stolen trade routes were buried under endless discussions. And when a group of powerful empires formed a coalition to discipline Earth, the council allowed it. As the chamber emptied, Rhys Hale stood alone for a moment, his fists clenched behind his back. He looked up at the grand ceiling where the stars of the galaxy shone like tiny lights. "You've made your choice," he whispered to no one. "Now, we'll make ours." Outside, the stars burned silently, unaware that soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity truly was. Months passed after the council meeting, and the galaxy returned to its usual rhythm of trade, politics, and quiet corruption. But on the outer edges of human space, darkness was growing. Fleets belonging to the so-called Coalition of Order, a group of powerful alien empires, began to move. Their mission was simple: punish Earth, remind humanity of its place, and take control of its valuable colonies. The first attack came without warning. On the colony world of New Carthage, a bright blue planet filled with forests and oceans, alien warships appeared in orbit. They jammed communication channels and demanded surrender. When the humans refused, the bombardment began. Cities turned to glass, forests burned, and millions died under alien fire. The news spread fast across the stars, but the council did nothing. They called it a necessary correction. In the heart of the solar system, Earth watched the destruction in silence. Governments argued. Military leaders demanded action. And among them, Admiral Elena Vorin, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, stood before a dark screen showing the ruins of New Carthage. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with rage. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think we will bow. But they have forgotten who we are." Humanity had always been slow to start, but once moving, it was unstoppable. Factories on Mars began to roar with life. Shipyards around Jupiter glowed as thousands of engineers worked day and night. The Titan Forge, humanity's largest orbital construction ring, was locked down under highest secrecy. Something massive was being built there, something the galaxy had never seen before. Meanwhile, smaller human fleets fought desperate battles to protect the colonies that remained. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they fought with a madness the aliens didn't understand. On the edge of the Vega system, Captain Mason Ride of the destroyer Iron Wind faced 3 alien cruisers alone. His ship was burning, his crew wounded, but when the aliens demanded surrender, Mason laughed. "Surrender," he said through blood and smoke. "You first." Then he rammed his ship into the enemy flagship, detonating the reactor. The explosion lit up the stars, a signal of defiance that every human ship received loud and clear. Across the colonies, that story spread like fire. Humanity was angry, united, and no longer afraid. News feeds called it the turning point. The coalition called it human madness. But Admiral Voran knew what it truly was, the awakening of an old instinct buried deep in every human soul. Back at the Galactic Council, the delegates continued their meetings, still confident, still blind. They spoke of victories and future control over Earth. None of them realized that in secret shipyards, under red Martian skies and icy moons, the revenge of humanity was already being built, piece by piece, in silence. And when it was finished, the galaxy would remember the words spoken by Ambassador Rhys Hale, "Do not provoke us." But by then, it would be too late. The year after the attack on New Carthage became known as the Year of Fire. Every human world carried scars, and every family carried grief. Yet, in the pain, something powerful was born, a unity that humanity had never known before. Nations that once argued over borders and power now stood side by side. From the crowded streets of Earth to the domed cities of Mars, one message echoed everywhere: never again. In the secret depths beneath the Martian surface, Admiral Elena Voran walked through a massive steel corridor. Around her, engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked without rest. The air smelled of metal and fuel. Through a transparent window, she looked out into the endless red dust, and beyond it, a half-built shape floated in orbit above Mars. It was larger than any ship ever created by humankind. Its name, still classified, was whispered only in secure rooms: Project Retribution. The ship would be humanity's answer to every insult, every death, every broken treaty. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise. Built from alloys mined in the asteroid belt and powered by a new fusion core, it could burn through a fleet on its own. The coalition didn't know it existed. Not yet. Back on Earth, Ambassador Rhys Hale worked in the shadow of politics. The Galactic Council had cut all diplomatic ties with humanity, claiming Earth had brought destruction upon itself. Rhys had seen their arrogance before, but now he saw something else behind their words: fear. The aliens didn't understand humanity, but deep down, they remembered what humans did when cornered. Meanwhile, the colonies that survived the first wave were transforming. On New Kyoto, farmers turned their machines into weapons. On Europa, miners armed themselves with railguns. Everywhere, ordinary people became soldiers. The coalition thought they had broken humanity. Instead, they had forged it into something unstoppable. In orbit above Jupiter, the first new-generation human warship, TDS Vengeance, came online. Its hull gleamed black under the sun, its weapon systems glowing with silent power. Admiral Voran stood on the command deck, watching as it joined a growing fleet. Hundreds of ships, frigates, destroyers and carriers, rose one by one from the shipyards. They were not built for defense anymore. They were built for payback. At night, the people of Earth could see streaks of light moving across the sky, ships leaving for the front lines. Children pointed at them, whispering, "They're going to make them pay." The Galactic Council still laughed, still dismissed human reports as lies. But cracks were beginning to show. Border patrols went missing. Trade convoys disappeared. Unknown signals came from the edge of coalition space, short bursts of coded transmissions carrying one word only: retribution. Humanity was no longer pleading for peace. The silence before the storm had ended. The galaxy just didn't realize yet that the storm was already on its way. The galaxy had grown complacent. The coalition of order, confident in their power, prepared for another strike against human colonies. Their warships gleamed like dark jewels in space, engines humming with deadly purpose. They believed the humans had been weakened by the first attack, that their fleets were scattered and their resolve shaken. They were wrong. On the bridge of the coalition flagship Varkith Dominator, Admiral Syra, a tall, scaled alien with silver eyes, studied a holographic map. "They are hiding something," she hissed to her second-in-command. "The colonies are too quiet. They should be begging for mercy by now." Her words carried no weight among her crew. The coalition delegates had dismissed humanity as a minor threat, a young species with no experience in galactic warfare. They had expected fear, surrender, and obedience. But humans had never understood the meaning of fear the way the galaxy did. On the edge of the Orion Belt, human scouts detected the approaching fleet. Captain Mason Ride, back from his lone battle at Vega, stared at the readings. "They're bringing everything they have," he muttered. His ship, the Iron Wind, had been repaired and upgraded since his last encounter. "It's going to be a long fight." Human fleets moved quickly, almost invisibly, assembling in secret locations across the galaxy. Admiral Elena Voron coordinated the defenses, her calm voice cutting through comms channels. "Formation Alpha," she ordered. "Engage only if provoked. Watch for openings. Patience is our weapon." As the coalition warships entered human territory, they were met with an eerie silence. Sensors detected no fleets, no defensive stations, nothing. It was as if humanity had vanished entirely. Confidence among the coalition ranks faltered. The first few scouts were lost to hidden mines, carefully placed in deep space by human engineers. The explosions were precise, surgical, and terrifying. Then, the human fleet struck. The attack came not as a desperate defense, but with precision and control. Ships hidden behind asteroids and orbital shadows opened fire simultaneously, catching the coalition off guard. Missile salvos, energy beams, and plasma cannons tore through the flagship Vanguard. Coalition officers shouted orders, but confusion spread faster than their ships could react. Captain Mason Ride led the charge from the Iron Wind, weaving between enemy fire. "This is what happens," he growled, "when you underestimate humanity." His ship cut through a cruiser, leaving nothing but debris and flames in its wake. Back on Earth, news feeds broadcast the first victories. Children cheered. Citizens hugged strangers. Humanity had risen from ashes, ready to fight. Not for survival alone, but for respect, for revenge, and for a warning to the galaxy. They were no longer to be ignored. And as the first coalition fleets fell in space, Ambassador Rhys Hale watched from the council chambers, a small, satisfied smile on his face. He knew the galaxy would soon learn a lesson it would never forget: never provoke humanity. The war had begun, and humanity's wrath was only starting to be felt. The coalition had underestimated humanity. Their fleets, once confident and arrogant, now retreated in disarray. Reports of destroyed warships and lost patrols spread through their communication networks like wildfire. Panic rippled through the council chambers, though most delegates still refused to believe it. Humans were young, they insisted, reckless, but this was something different. Something unstoppable. Deep in the outer systems, hidden from prying sensors, the Shadow Fleet prepared for its first strike. This was not a defensive force, it was humanity's secret weapon. Built in the shadows of moons and asteroids, it contained ships far larger and deadlier than anything previously seen. The hulls were black, almost invisible against space, and their engines emitted a quiet hum instead of a roar. Admiral Elena Voron stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, the largest ship ever built by humans. She looked at her officers, calm but firm. "This fleet is not just a weapon," she said. "It is our message. Every system we strike, every fleet we destroy, must remember who humanity is. We fight not only for survival but for respect." Captain Mason Ride, back from his battles with the Iron Wind, checked his crew. "They won't see us coming," he said, his voice grim. And when they do, it'll be too late. The Shadow Fleet moved silently through the dark corridors of space, bypassing coalition patrols with precise calculations. They struck first at the supply routes feeding the invading forces, cutting off reinforcements and leaving enemy fleets isolated. Mines hidden in asteroid fields detonated with perfect timing, crippling cruisers before their crews even knew what hit them. In one corner of the galaxy, a coalition transport convoy carrying supplies and officers disappeared without a trace. Rumors spread among coalition worlds, stories of a black fleet that appeared out of nowhere, striking and vanishing before anyone could respond. Fear replaced arrogance. They had mocked humans. They had laughed. And now, the galaxy whispered the name of their nightmare, humanity's shadow. Back on Earth, civilians and soldiers alike followed news feeds with fascination and awe. Children drew pictures of massive black ships, while adults shared stories of Admiral Voren, Captain Ryde, and Ambassador Hale. Humanity was no longer a young species to be dismissed, it was a rising storm. Even in the council chambers, whispers of fear began to grow. Some delegates, the ones who had fought humans before, remembered the warnings. They tried to convince their peers, do not ignore humanity. Do not underestimate them. But pride and arrogance were hard to break. Meanwhile, the Shadow Fleet continued its silent march. With each mission, humanity learned more about the coalition, its weaknesses, its secrets, its arrogance. Every strike was calculated, every victory deliberate. The humans had not just survived, they had adapted, evolved, and were preparing to deliver a final lesson. Above Mars, the Retribution gleamed under the stars, its engines ready, its weapons charged. Admiral Voren looked at the stars and whispered, "The galaxy will pay for its mistakes. And when it does, it will remember us forever." The war had entered a new phase. Silence, shadows, and strategy now dominated the battlefield. The galaxy was no longer safe from humanity, and the first real storm had yet to fall. The victories of the Shadow Fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Systems that once scoffed at humanity now trembled in fear. Entire coalition fleets vanished without a trace, supply lines were severed, and communication networks were disrupted. Yet the Galactic Council remained in its grand chamber, trying to maintain control, though cracks were beginning to show. Ambassador Rhys Hale stood at the edge of the chamber, watching as delegates argued bitterly among themselves. "You see," he said softly to no one in particular, "they still do not understand. They never will, until it is too late." The council speaker, ancient and proud, pounded its stone-like fists against the podium. "How can this be?" it thundered. "Humans are young, inexperienced, yet their fleets destroy ours as if we are children playing with fire." Rhys's gaze remained calm, his voice steady. "You ignored our warnings. You laughed at our words. Now the galaxy sees what humanity is capable of when pushed." In secret war rooms across human space, Admiral Elena Voren coordinated the next phase of operations. She knew the Council's attention could not be distracted forever. "The coalition is scared," she told her officers. "They will make mistakes. Every misstep is an opportunity. Patience and precision will win this war." Captain Mason Ryde, aboard the Iron Wind, received reports of another coalition fleet stranded near the Nebula of Thorns. "They walked right into our trap," he said with a grim smile. "Let's show them the cost of underestimating humans." The attack began swiftly. Plasma cannons lit up the nebula like lightning, tearing enemy cruisers apart. Smaller human frigates struck from hidden positions, raking the fleet with precise laser fire. Coalition soldiers, who had once sneered at humanity's tenacity, now panicked as their ships were destroyed piece by piece. News from the front lines spread quickly back to Earth. Citizens celebrated every victory but also understood the cost. Every human life lost in these battles was remembered, honored, and avenged. The message was clear: humanity did not fight blindly. Every action was calculated, every strike meaningful. Back at the Galactic Council, fear replaced arrogance. Delegates whispered among themselves, some admitting quietly that humans were unlike any species they had faced. The stories of the Shadow Fleet, of entire convoys disappearing, and of human ingenuity in battle could no longer be dismissed as luck or coincidence. Rhys Hale observed silently. The Council had once believed humans were reckless and fragile. Now, even the most powerful delegates realized that misjudging humanity could cost them entire civilizations. They will never forget this, he thought. And neither will we. In the darkness of space, the human fleets moved silently, striking where the enemy was weakest, disappearing before retaliation could arrive. The Shadow Fleet was no longer just a threat, it was a symbol. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson. Humanity was not to be ignored, and the Council's laughter had turned into fear. The war had shifted. No longer was humanity merely defending itself. Now, it was the hunter, and the galaxy had become its prey. The first tremors of revenge were felt everywhere, and the Council could only watch, powerless, as the storm grew stronger. The galaxy had grown quiet, not the calm of peace, but the tense silence that comes before a storm. Everywhere, coalition worlds whispered of the human fleets that appeared and vanished without warning. No one could predict where the next strike would hit. The Council had lost control, and fear replaced arrogance in every chamber. Admiral Elena Voron stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, her eyes scanning the holographic map of coalition territories. "We have the advantage," she said calmly. "They are scared, disorganized, and overconfident. We strike now, we hit them hard, and we make them remember Earth." Captain Mason Ride tightened his grip on the controls of the Iron Wind. "They laughed at us before," he said, "but they won't laugh again." His voice carried the weight of battles fought and friends lost. The crews around him nodded, their determination matching his. Every human aboard these ships knew the stakes. Failure was not an option. The first wave of the reckoning began at the colony of Seraphis Prime, a mining world under coalition control. Human ships slipped past sensors, striking depots, communications towers, and defense platforms with surgical precision. Explosions lit up the planet, sending debris into orbit, while human forces disabled orbital defenses to prevent reinforcements. The humans did not kill recklessly, they dismantled the enemy's ability to fight back efficiently, sending a clear message: humanity fights smart, not just hard. Across the galaxy, simultaneous strikes were carried out on multiple coalition worlds. The Shadow Fleet moved like a phantom, never staying in one system long enough to be caught. Coalition leaders panicked, issuing contradictory orders, and their fleets stumbled into traps laid long before the humans arrived. Back on Earth, Ambassador Rhys Hale addressed the Council via encrypted transmission. His voice, calm and resolute, carried across the galaxy. "You ignored us. You laughed at us. Now humanity has chosen action. Every fleet, every colony, every planet you thought you controlled is at risk. Do not test our patience again." The Council delegates recoiled. Some pleaded for mercy. Others tried to rationalize the attacks as coincidences or sabotage. But deep down, all of them knew the truth. The humans were organized, relentless, and unstoppable. Every warning they had ignored had come to life in a storm they could not control. Amid the chaos, Admiral Voron gave the final orders for the campaign's decisive strike. "Target their command centers," she said. "Strike swiftly, and leave nothing to question. This is our reckoning. Make it count." As human fleets moved silently toward the heart of coalition space, the galaxy began to understand the true meaning of the words Ambassador Hale had spoken months ago: "Do not provoke us." The first true wave of humanity's vengeance was no longer just a threat. It was reality. And as explosions flared across distant worlds, the coalition realized their arrogance had cost them more than pride. They had awakened a force they could not stop. Humanity's reckoning had begun. The final phase of humanity's vengeance unfolded with terrifying precision. The coalition, once proud and untouchable, scrambled desperately to defend their core systems. But every fleet they sent was met with unseen human forces. Every stronghold they relied on was already under attack. Humanity moved like a shadow across the galaxy, striking with patience, cunning, and fury. Admiral Elena Voron stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, watching the holographic map as coalition planets fell one by one. They ignored our warnings, she said, voice calm yet filled with resolve. Now they will pay for every death, every betrayal, every act of arrogance. Around her, officers and soldiers worked in perfect synchrony. Every strike had been planned, every move calculated. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. It was reclaiming respect. Captain Mason Ride led the Shadow Fleet into the Coalition capital system, a cluster of planets that had once been untouchable. His crew, battle-hardened and fearless, moved like lightning, disabling defenses, cutting off communications, and striking at command centers with deadly accuracy. Every victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy, breaking the morale of even the most steadfast coalition leaders. Back at the Galactic Council, the ancient delegates could no longer hide their fear. Even the speaker, proud and imperious, trembled as reports poured in. Entire fleets had vanished, worlds were under human control, and their authority, built over millennia, was crumbling. The Council had ignored humanity's warnings, and now it was paying the ultimate price. In a secure room on Earth, Ambassador Rhys Hale addressed humanity and the galaxy alike. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. We did not seek war. We sought only peace and respect. But when we were pushed, when we were ignored, humanity stood together. We endured. We adapted. And now, the galaxy knows that humans are not to be underestimated. The coalition, broken and defeated, sued for peace. Negotiations were no longer about dominance. They were about survival. Humanity dictated the terms, ensuring that no species would ever dismiss them again. Planets that had been lost were reclaimed. Colonies rebuilt. Trade routes restored. And for the first time, humans felt the full weight of their victory. As the fleets returned home, the people of Earth, Mars, and every human colony cheered. Children watched the skies where the victorious ships sailed, dreaming of the day humanity reached even further into the stars. Humanity had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger, united, and respected. The Galactic Council would never forget the lesson. Humans were young, yes, but they were cunning, relentless, and unstoppable when provoked. Ambassador Hale's words echoed through the halls of history. Do not provoke us. And from the silence of the stars, humanity's triumph shone as a warning, a promise, and a declaration. The galaxy had learned that underestimating Earth was the gravest mistake it could ever make. Humanity had paid. Humanity had conquered. Humanity had triumphed.